This is it, my friend. It's an impossible top five, and someone has to lose out. And on this occasion with me, it's Mohamed Salah.
It's been an incredible season for Mohamed Salah, and it's been an incredible career so far for the Egyptian superstar. Obviously, topped off by what he's done with Liverpool Football Club. 229 goals, 102 assists in 373 matches. And that's after spells at Roma, Fiorentina, Chelsea, and FC Basel. And it's just been a fantastic, fantastic career for this man. How would you summarize his career so far as a whole?
He's a game changer. He's a match winner. He's a world-class individual on and off the field, but the performances on the field do a hell of a lot of talking, and some of the times what happens off the field is also as important for what Mohamed Salah stands for.
Yes.
But I'm really, really impressed with what he's done, especially over the last 6 seasons, 6, 7, 8 seasons. Certainly his performances have got better and better, and he's become into that category of world-class superstar. And I think at some point we've got to start to recognise that, okay, Messi and Ronaldo sort of set the stage for the recent generation of what world-class should be, but we've got to start to put other players in that category as well. And if there is one player who's been as consistent as those two when it comes to goals and assists in a top division, it has to be Mohamed Salah. And in European competition, it has to be Mohamed Salah. I mean, this guy's on his way to a Ballon d'Or, certainly with the season that he's having right now. Liverpool are on the way to winning potentially 4 titles, which would be absolutely ridiculous. And this guy, if he can have success, obviously for his national team as well over the next couple of years, you never know. This guy might change a generation of the next ones coming through as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. You look at what Mo Salah. I mean, if you look at the season he's having now, I think it's very fair to say that he is currently the best player in the world. As it stands today, December 23rd, 2024, he could be the best player in the world today. But how is he viewed on his home continent? One thing is his success in Europe, but on his home continent, it may be a bit different. And for that, we bring in our man, Mbizo Mzamane, to break it all down for us. Mbizo, happy holidays, my man. Good to have you on the show with us.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. The same to you. I love the topic.
It's a good one, and it's a controversial one as well. So let's talk about just how Mohamed Salah is viewed in the African community, because one thing, obviously, we see him from over here in the States and in Europe. He's viewed as one of the most spectacular footballers in the world. But how is he viewed in his home continent?
That's a fantastic question, and it is a little bit different than what he's viewed as on the world scale. But let me be very, very clear that I in fact even love the idea that he could be considered the best player in the world at the moment. I would stand by that, absolutely, and one of the best players in the world over the last couple of seasons. That's without question, and all of Africa adores Mohamed Salah, his style and who he is. He's even been dubbed the African Messi, so he's certainly adored and lauded on the African continent. However, when questions begin to arise about his performances for Egypt and his failure to lead them to success under his tenure, that's when the questions or any naysayers for Mohamed Salah would come in and speak to that. We as Africans, of course, as it should be for anyone from anywhere, we value the performances in our continental competitions. We value performances in African Champions League. We value your performances in AFCON. And because of some of his faltering on the continent, he might find himself with some difficulty breaking into, say, for example, the top 5 African players of all time. But certainly top 10, it would be difficult to deny the Pharaoh.
Yeah, 52 goals and 71 appearances for his country, not good enough, is interesting to me, Mbizo. It's great to see you, man. I miss you, brother. But I got to go back to it, right? Obviously, in Africa in general, I've been lucky enough to travel around Africa and experience what life is like, but also how it is viewed country to country, superstar to superstar, team for team. Obviously, where players play is an important part in that as well. So around the globe, obviously, if we look at the continent of Africa in itself, how different would you be viewed if you were playing for Egypt compared to if you were, playing for a country who's in the south or in the west or in the east?
I think it's difficult for the non-African fan to assimilate that African fans care just as much about our continental competitions as we do about domestic competitions in Europe or World Cup and other such competitions. I mean, you've obviously just mentioned some of his statistics there, but a Mo Salah, for example, might even have trouble being considered the best Egyptian player of all time. In fact, Mohamed Aboutrika is one of the players who Africans unanimously tend to put among the top players of all time from the continent. And he's unknown to most non-African football fans because he plied his trade for the entirety of his career in Egypt. But of course, he won several AFCONs, several Champions Leagues. He was top goal scorer for a number of those campaigns, both continental and international. And so players like this tend to take center stage because we believe that if you are truly so great and these European leagues and countries are so vastly superior to ours, then you should have no problem performing it to the same level on the continent, right? You should have no problem scoring important goals and leading your team, a team like Egypt, who is the most successful African team on the continent, to a championship. But he has failed to do so. And so that is the only thing that naysayers could potentially say about him. And certainly in my group, in my network of proponents, analysts, coaches, professional players, and people who are really at the pinnacle and peak of the African game. I did a minor survey of them to see where they would put Mohamed Salah. And unfortunately, not one of them, at least in my very small network of people, put his name up in the top 5. Aboutrika was the name that continually showed up from Egypt. And the only 2 names that were unanimous out of every single person that I spoke to was Samuel Eto'o and Yaya Toure. So again, on the African continent, it's quite complicated because there's so many different variables, including, by the way, us having to consider where a player might or might not have gotten to had there not been certain biases and discriminations of certain African players. For example, we always imagine that if JJ Okocha had played in today's game, he wouldn't have ended up at a Bolton, but rather Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. So we also think about the epoch. We think about the quality of the national team and what their capacity was to win at the international level. So there's a number of different variables that become different for an African player on the continent as opposed to outside.
I mean, that's dropping knowledge on us there, because I definitely do understand. I do think that comparing players in different eras sometimes can get a bit messy, just because of how difficult it is to truly compare the competition and the level of competition that was played in the past versus now, and as well as not winning a trophy with his country. He did take Egypt to 2 finals as well. Is that not some sort of success? Maybe not the ultimate success, but it is an interesting conversation. Okay, but we want to get now, Mbizo, to your top 5 African players of all time.
All right, let me preface my argument for the top 5 by saying that, again, there's a number of names in here that are interchangeable, and surely I'm going to come under heat. But if anyone would like to challenge in a different platform or in more detail these selections, I'd be very, very open to that. I'd love that challenge. But my very subjective African top 5, Samuel Eto'o, Yaya Toure, JJ Okocha, Abedi Pele, and very controversially, Sadio Mane. I am going to leave out George Weah, DJ Drogba, and Aboutrika, who are absolutely honorable mentions, but I'm leaving out George Weah.
Wow. You kind of hurt my soul just that little bit, because George Weah actually made me fall in love with soccer just that little bit more, and he actually was the one that led me to Italian football as well. And I always remember him playing with those bright orange boots, playing in that old school AC Milan jersey, running from his own box and scoring at the other end of the field. That changed my outlook, and actually in many ways it introduced me to African football as well. So, obviously from someone who grew up in mainland Europe to understanding what it was to be an African footballer and what African humans have to go through to even get to that type of platform, it opened up my eyes and it opened up my vision that this is a big world, and some people have it difficult to try and get to that stage, and George Weah changed the future for me, and I love football even more so because of it. So you hurt my soul just a little bit there, but I cannot believe for one single minute that Mohamed Salah is not in your top 5, especially when you consider what he has achieved with Liverpool Football Club alone. I understand obviously throughout his career he's been at Chelsea, He's been at Fiorentina, he's been at Roma, he's been at other places where it wasn't necessarily always great for him or easy for him, and performances weren't necessarily as consistent. But this guy might go down as one of the greatest Premier League players of all time, and yet still doesn't make your top 5. So if he wins a Ballon d'Or, would that be the thing that maybe sways it for you, that creeps him into your top 5? Or you tell me what he has to do to make your top 5?
He needs to win with Egypt for me. Even the Ballon d'Or, as you've seen with George Weah, it didn't quite sneak him into the top. And again, let me be very clear. This is not to say that these are not iconic players and these are not players who are critical for the success of the African game and who obviously are some of the best players to ever lace them up. I mean, both George Weah and Mohamed Salah are in my top 10 again. But it's this monkey on the back of not having won with a team who's so accustomed to winning. And if you are truly the best, why is it that you are not able to rise with this team who is among the best of all time on the continent and prove that you are? And again, the names that I have mentioned have all been AFCON winners, and many of them have been selected as players of the tournament, both as AFCON champions and not. Even when they've fallen short, they've been considered either the best players of this tournament or they have been the top goal scorers of the tournament. So again, Mohamed Salah is one of the best of all time, no question. In fact, in Premier League terms, for me, the only player that's been better than him has been my idol, and it still boggles my mind to say, and colleague Thierry Henry. But beyond that, I think the next is Mohamed Salah. But on the African continent, he's competing with some real giants who have also captured the essence of African football, who have also battled to make their name, not just in Europe, but have represented their nations on the continent in a way that Mohamed Salah just hasn't quite managed to do. But again, if somebody else puts Mo Salah in that top 5, you will hear no argument from me. Absolutely not. The same goes for Didier Drogba, for George Weah, and for Mohamed Aboutrika. But Mbizo's controversial list is this one before you.
We love it.
Yeah, we love a controversial list on this show. We do love something on this show. It's a controversial list. And I'm going to tear it down just a little bit more. Sadio Mane on your list over Mohamed Salah. Is the AFCON championship the only reason Sadio Mane gets in above Mohamed Salah? Because arguably when you're talking about individual talent and prowess and what a player each can be, clearly Mohamed Salah the better player overall. So Sadio makes it because of the AFCON?
Stat-wise, he's a better player.
I think, yes, exactly. Thank you very much. That's what I was going to say. Statistically, and even individual accolades, probably the most successful player. But I do not think he's the more talented player. I do not think he's the better player overall. And yes, the fact that Sadio Mane has led Senegal to the AFCON as the best player of the tournament as well on a number of occasions makes an enormous difference for me. And again, players can come in just on talent. For example, JJ Okocha could not be said to have had the same successes as some of these other players. But a player that iconic, a player of that ability, you cannot ignore him. So even if he wasn't a giant in the European game, he certainly remains a giant of the African game. And so Sadio edges Mohamed Salah in that regard. But again, Salah is very, very tight in the top 10.
Listen, Africa has spoiled us with some immense talents in football, and it's from all levels as well, in different countries that obviously African players have gone on to have tremendous success with, and the statistics simply don't lie. That's simply your opinion as to what the top 5 is, and we can't even argue with it because the top 5's ridiculous. The names you've got in there deserve to be in the top 5 somewhere. I mean, I could even throw more names out because I'm slightly older. I'd go to Roger Milla back in 1990, the little sexy dance on the corner flag. I mean, these types of moments. Sami Kufor drinking beer with Bayern Munich, getting to a Champions League final, losing it to Manchester United and crying eventually. But what a player he was.
This is it, my friend. It's an impossible top 5, and someone has to lose out. And on this occasion with me, it's Mohamed Salah. But please, Egyptian Pharaoh, do not hold it against me.
I love to see it. Mbizo Mzamane, thank you so much for joining us, my man. You dropped some knowledge on us here today.
Happy holidays, buddy.
Thank you for having me, gents. Merry Christmas to you all.